Hello everybody, welcome back to another light novel review. Today I'm going to be talking about volume number 1 in Yuu Kamiya and Tsubaki Himana's light novel series, Clockwork Planet. Now this premiered in Japan in 2013. There has been a 12-episode anime series that just finished running in June of this year that from what I can tell covered volumes 1 to 3. There are currently 4 volumes released in Japan. From what I've heard, there's supposedly rumored to be a 5th one. However, the 4th one came out in December of 2015, so it's been a little while, but not so long that it's hopeless, I would say, that we're going to get more of this series. Now, this one is told in the third person, although with a very conversational type style. The author will every now and then break in with things like, "You wouldn't be wrong to think this," or "Rather, you should actually know," or, "You know, things kind of went like this." It doesn't happen very often. I wouldn't say it's overly intrusive, but it is definitely present. This one, it is a joint authorship between Yuu Kamiya and Tsubaki Himana. From what you can tell in the afterword, it really does sound like they went back and forth on this one in terms of who was doing what. It sounds like initially Yuu Kamiya came up with sort of the plot overall, and then he handed it off to Himana to write it. But then as they went back and forth, those lines got a little blurred, so who even really knows? However, if you are familiar with Yuu Kamiya's work in No Game, No Life, there's absolutely things in here that are his trademark that you will most definitely recognize as being something common from Yuu Kamiya's novels. So let's talk about it. So this book is set 1,000 years or so after the Earth has died. This part I found kind of funny. It starts off very early, and it's sort of like, yeah, you know, we all kind of figured the Earth was going to die because of this, or this, and nah, it just friggin' gave up the ghost for really no reason other than it was tired. And however, humankind was saved by this sort of now viewed as being a near omnipotent individual who has only become known as the initial Y, and he basically came up with this plan to recreate the whole functioning of the Earth using clockwork. Now, as we get into our story 1,000 years later, we have young man Naoto. He is gifted with a near supernatural hearing ability that he can basically hear anything he wants. And one night his apartment is destroyed by this storage container, and inside he finds this automaton, this very beautiful young girl automaton, who, using his hearing ability, he hears that there are things out of sync with her, and he is able to repair her. And this girl turns out, of course, to be a very important automaton. Now, in the course of this story, we also have another thread that is going on, which is the city of Kyoto, where Naoto lives, is having a problem. There are gravitational fluctuations that are being caused because the inner workings of the city are out of whack. Now, the thing that's about this world is that nobody really knows exactly how it works down to its finest details. For the most part, humanity just kind of gets by through patchwork and guessing by golly. So a group has been called in that are considered sort of the best of this whole maintenance, and they are the Meisters. And the main girl leading them is a prodigy, a 16-year-old prodigy by the name of Marie, and she is trying to find out how to fix this city before it is destroyed by these gravitational fluctuations. Enter in a whole bunch of action, some political intrigue, and everything else, and it ends up being all of our characters meeting up and racing to try and save the city and 20 million lives from doom. This one reads a lot like an RPG. I gotta be honest, like as I was going through it, it really struck me. I was like, man, this is like darn near every JRPG that I have played. Like this whole, like, I'm a normal guy, and all of a sudden, oops, there's like this amazing automaton, which kind of reminds me a little bit of Chobits, if you've ever seen that, but, you know, totally different type of story, but nonetheless, very much a JRPG, this whole thing, like even the sort of action bits as you get towards the end where it seems like there's different levels of bosses that kind of get in their way as they're making their progress. All in all, though, what really made this book for me was the world building. It was such an interesting idea. And I mean, we can say that it's outlandish and perhaps incredibly unrealistic, but it's still just cool as hell. I mean, the whole world basically running on clockwork and gears and just, trying to think of all of these incredibly finite and at times almost mysterious works of nature in our world that keeps the planet going, trying to imagine all of those processes broken down to clockwork and the turning of gears and everything else. It is really, really a cool idea. And then when you start adding in to this whole world building aspect, the fact that, even though humanity has kind of fumbled along and been able to sort of keep things going, nobody really knows every intricate detail of this planet. This was sort of envisioned by this one super genius, and his blueprints have all disappeared. And so humanity's kind of limping along, even though at the same time, it still possesses all the same stupid thing that humanity does, your thirst for power, your thirst for political power, and everything else that, of course, always messes things up, whether it's in a light novel or real life. So the world building aspect of it I found really cool. Like, I don't know. I mean, maybe that makes me a little bit of a geek for that kind of like gears and mechanisms, but I just like visually in my head as I'm reading this, I just thought this is such a cool idea that how this world functions and how it's put together. And the characters are serviceable. I mean, again, I said earlier, this is a very much a Yuu Kamiya book. Like, you can see his influences. For instance, Marie, of course, she's cute, she's young, she's 16, she's a lolly. And of course, there's at least one scene where she inadvertently shows up somewhere naked. And that, of course, is a full color illustration in the front of the book. Classic. Characters at the most critical moment have a complete nonsensical like breakdown of, we need to have a conversation that, why are we doing this right now? Like, any sane person is kind of questioning this, but again, this is the kind of stuff that happens in Yuu Kamiya books where at least two characters will start talking and blabbering back together, and it's an important character moment, but it's really happening at a point where you're like, I don't think you guys should be having this conversation right now. But it happens anyway, and whatever, we move on. All in all, though, the pacing of this book, it was kind of interesting. The beginning of it, especially where Naoto finds... Now, I'm not even sure how exactly pronounce this. I should have, at least watched the first episode of the series to get it, but the automaton, it's Ryuzu, or they do RYU and then capital ZU. So I'm not sure if it's supposed to be Ryuzu or... I'm not sure. I should have looked it up, but I didn't, and I just read it, so it's what I had it in my head. Anyway, Ryuzu, because that's what I'm going to call her for now. Feel free to correct me if you've watched the anime. But it starts off initially like a very sort of slice of life kind of thing. Like, Naoto, because he's like a total gearhead, and because like he's all interested in this whole thing, and because he's got the hearing that allows him to sort of hear how gears work and everything, he's obsessed with this kind of stuff, and it's made him kind of a social outcast. And so initially, he and Ryuzu are, it's sort of like a bit of a school comedy, It's like the outcast kid ending up with the hot girl at school, and it's kind of like a little bit of a slice of life kind of thing, and them dating and kind of getting to know each other, like, well, not dating, but it's like that. It's like this slice of life thing. Meanwhile, we have that played out against Marie and this sort of political and machinations and everything else, and these guys trying to save the city, and eventually these storylines converge. I liked the whole book. Obviously, as things became more dire and everything else, and as sort of Naoto was brought into Marie's storyline, the book became a lot more thrilling. There was some fairly cool action sequences, some very outlandish fights and battles. Again, it's like I said, it felt so much like an RPG to me, you know, like that whole thing of like boy meets mysterious girl, boy and girl start to get along, boy and girl have to save the world, you know, have to fight through different levels and different bosses, and then they have to like solve puzzles, and it just really, yeah, like it just really felt like a JRPG to me, like this book. But all in all, I really enjoyed it. You know, like I said, there were certain parts that I just, you know, I laughed. I was like, okay, this is such a Yuu Kamiya thing that you guys are acting so foolish at this really important moment. You know, or the fact that Naoto is referred often to as a pervert, and even he himself is questioning whether he's kind of a pervert, because the thing about Ryuzu is that she is verbally abusive even if she likes you. Like, she's always verbally abusive, and Naoto starts realizing that he kind of likes it. And again, I'm like, Yuu Kamiya, here it is again. You know, but so that whole like thing where he likes being abused, yeah. So I mean, like that. Those are kind of like those little Yuu Kamiya hallmarks that are stamped all over this. That I was like, yep, I totally see that this is done by the dude who did No Game, No Life. The writing style overall, though, is slightly different in terms of just like the character dialogues. In fact, what I found interesting is the character dialogues, even though there are four characters, often more than that, even at times, I found that like Yuu Kamiya, when he does No Game, No Life, there are often times where you have multiple people speaking, and there's no tags indicating who it is that's the speaker. There's at times it's not exactly clear who the speaker is, and there's just these big long runs of conversation. That didn't really happen in this book. So stylistically, I could say that even though there were certainly elements that I'm like, yep, I see that's Yuu Kamiya, and I can see where Yuu Kamiya would slip that in there, I would say that overall the actual writing style felt a little bit different. We didn't have as many of the big long runs of conversation. Conversation was still interspersed with text tags that would indicate who the speaker was, or with other actions that made it clear who was speaking. As I said, this sort of conversational style that the author had, it was a little bit different than what Yuu Kamiya does, and it made things a little clearer about, as I said, like who's talking, what's happening, you know, what is this conversation that's happening, who's having this conversation. It was a little bit, yeah, like I said, stylistically a little bit different. Story-wise, definitely I could see the little parts where I'm like, that's a Yuu Kamiya thing. And I mean, it's not to say that, you know, Himana couldn't have done it himself, but it just smacks so much of No Game, No Life that I have to chalk it up to Yuu Kamiya being involved. But overall, as I said, the writing style was a little bit different, and I'd say maybe a little bit more enjoyable for somebody coming into this that's newer to light novels. Like I said, No Game, No Life at times can be a little difficult just because you sit there scratching your head wondering who the hell is talking right now. I didn't find that happened in this book. And, you know, add in all the other elements to it, sort of the cool, like, world building and what kind of technology exists because of how this world functions, and just generally the cool idea of a world running on clockwork. That really sold me on this. I think it's the world building that really sold me on this. And I will also say where the book ends, and I don't really, and of course, I'm not looking to spoil things for you, but the place where the book ends, it makes me really curious about what's going to happen here on. There's a little taste of it in the prologue. I won't get any further of that, but the prologue sort of gives you an idea of just where this story may be heading as a series. It definitely, the way this thing ends, it feels like there's going to be more. And of course, like I said at the beginning, there are at least 3 more books. I don't know if there's going to be a 5th one. It seems to be a very long, drawn-out process. But even when you're reading the afterword, it sounds like even just getting this first book written, it took a long time. So I guess it's not without possibility that we'll see a 5th book. But there are 3 more. As I said, the anime, I believe, only covered volumes 1 to 3. At least that's kind of what I saw when I was doing some searching online. People were saying. So at least it sounds like there's 1 more volume beyond the anime. And it sounds like the anime kind of ended on a cliffhanger, so I'm supposing that's a good thing. But without having read it myself, well, I can't say. So, Clockwork Planet. You know, I don't know about the manga. We actually got the manga released before the light novels, so I don't know if you've read the manga. I don't know what the differences are. I know Sean Gaffney did a review on this light novel, and he had read the manga. He said the light novel was a lot better. So I don't know if that's maybe any indication to you guys about whether if maybe you read the manga and you were kind of like me on it. You know, all I can say is what Sean said, because I haven't read the manga, even though I have the first volume somewhere, but yeah, anyway. So those are my thoughts on Clockwork Planet Volume 1. Really good world building, some iffy story parts, but overall a very strong volume that really drew me in and had lots of good action that carried me right through to the end and made me very curious about just where these characters are going to go in the future. So for my next review, it's going to be part of my Let's Get Caught Up on Older series that I've never picked up. And this one is going to be Volume 1 of Book Girl. This one called Book Girl and the Suicidal Mime. I love that title. I've heard from quite a few people, August Hale, Sean Gaffney, Cho from English Light Novels. They've all said that this is a really good series, so I'm very excited to check it out. And again, it's fun now to... I've caught up with most of the volume 1s of newer series. I still have a couple to go, though, that I've got loaded. But yeah, it's going to be... I'm looking forward to checking this one out because it's come pretty highly rated from some people whose opinions I really do respect. So if you like light novels and you're brand new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe so you can check out all of my future light novel reviews, including reviews of Clockwork Planet and, of course, of Book Girl. Thank you all for joining me in this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Till then, bye-bye for now.